103 FM. This is Isles FM.
Broadcasting across the Western Isles, this is Isles FM from Stornoway.
Ukulga fuck na hilan and cheer a Stornoway at Isles FM.
From the heart of the Hebrides, Isles FM.
Well, good evening and welcome to this Thursday night show of Glow, coming to you on 103 Isles FM, your local community radio station. David Morrison here with you as normal, and we're through with you right through till 11 o'clock. The show on Thursday nights, 9 till 11, as normal, repeated on Sundays at 2 o'clock till 4 o'clock. So this is a pre-recorded show. Recorded this show on Tuesday, and very shortly we will be speaking to the guest for the evening, who's a gentleman by the name of Richard Lucas. And Richard's going to be telling us a bit about himself, where he comes from, what he's been doing, how Christ has come into his life, which is what the show is all about. Richard will have some selection of music as well, and he will be giving us some Bible readings, and along the way he'll be telling us why he chose the music that he chose and the readings that he has read. Richard is up on the island. He is promoting some information about the Scottish Family Party. We'll touch on that, where he's been, where he's going. Like I say, this is a pre-recorded show. Richard was in the County Hotel on Monday night, and he will be telling us where he's going to be on, where he was rather in this case, on the Tuesday and the Wednesday as well. So more from Richard coming up. That's Richard Lucas. He is up as a representative of the Scottish Family Party, and he'll tell us quite a lot about how he got where he is, why he's doing what he's doing, and where he's from, and a bit more about who Richard Lucas is, and all that kind of stuff. The usual kind of stuff that we have on our Glow, and stay tuned right through till 11 o'clock. Much for discussion coming up. We've got a gentleman in with me tonight called Richard Lucas. And Richard, thank you very much for coming along.
It's great to be here.
And first time visit to the islands?
It is, yes.
Okay. And we'll talk shortly about why you're up here. You are up representing the Scottish Family Party, so we'll find out exactly what that is. But mostly tonight we're going to be talking about you. So if you just give me a wee kind of summary first of all about who Richard Lucas is, where he comes from, and a bit of history as to what your employment was, what you were doing before you came in up here today, and
yeah. Well, I'm originally from Stoke-on-Trent in the middle of England. That's where I was brought up. Went to university in Birmingham. Then my first job was a teaching job. I was teaching maths, science, computing, etc. in a boarding school on the Isle of Wight. So I've got a little bit of island life experience. Very different though. Much smaller island with lots more people. Much shorter ferry journey. But I really enjoyed that being on the Isle of Wight. The feeling of a clearly defined community. It was great. And I feel that here as well. So I was on the Isle of Wight for 3 years. And then I felt called to Edinburgh. So I moved up to Edinburgh to work in a boarding school there. And I worked in there for 20 odd years. I was a housemaster for 8 years. So I was looking after up to 40 or 50 12 and 13-year-old boys, living with them basically 24/7. That was challenging, exciting. It was great. Really enjoyed that. More recently in Edinburgh, since I finished doing that, I've been involved more in sort of speaking, debating, writing from a Christian perspective, often on moral issues, political issues. And then since then, I felt led into politics, to get involved in politics more directly, and looked at different avenues of doing that, and starting a new party seemed to be the way to go. Again, I felt that was the direction that God was pointing me in, so that's what I'm doing now. So I finished teaching in the summer, and I'm now working full-time on the Scottish Family Party, still based in Edinburgh. I'm married, I've got 2 sons. The eldest one is his birthday last week, he's 15, and the younger one is 12.
Okay. So that was quite a wee synopsis there, pretty action-packed. So tell me a wee bit more about where you came from in your childhood.
As Stoke-on-Trent, I was brought up in a Christian family. They're Salvationists, so I was brought up in the Salvation Army. So in my younger days, I learned to play the cornet. I still play the trumpet a little bit, and went along to the local Salvation Army. And the great thing about it was, so it was a good community, I had good friends there, but the gospel was preached. So I would sit there each Sunday, and the gospel would be preached very clearly. That challenged me. From a very early age, I understood that that was something I needed to respond to personally. And I also realized that in my early teen years that it's something I hadn't done as well. But for one reason or another, I delayed and delayed and delayed. Part of the reason was, it seems so ridiculous looking back on it. I quite fancied having a lot of money. I quite fancied having a flashy car, etc. And I thought, if I become a Christian, who knows what God's going to send me to do? He might send me to be a missionary in China or something. That's the last thing I want. That's going to completely wreck my plans. So I delayed and delayed, but eventually when I was 16, I waited at a Christian camp. God really spoke to me very clearly, and the challenge was stronger than ever before. And I responded to that. I became a Christian at that point. I'd heard lots of testimonies about people who became Christians, had all sorts of incredible experiences, flashing lights, visions, voices from heaven. But just I felt like nothing had happened at all. So I almost wanted my money back. I didn't know what was going on. So I got home after this camp. I thought, well, nothing's happened. What should I do? And I saw my Bible on the shelf. I never read the Bible at the time. I thought, well, Christians are supposed to read their Bible, aren't they? So maybe I'll give that a try. So I took my Bible, so I dusted it off. I just opened it at random, and lots of people say don't do that. And anyway, I opened it at random and just read the first thing my eyes came to. And it was Jesus saying to the paralyzed man, if you want to be well, take up your mat and walk. God spoke to me through that very, very clearly. And the message was, if you want to be a follower of mine, if you want to be a Christian, then start living that life. It's over to you now to put that into action. And that's what I did. Well, I say that's what I did. That actually isn't what I did. I was confident that I was a Christian. But for the next couple of years while I was at sixth form at school, I didn't really act on it. I didn't talk about my faith at all. I wasn't particularly active in that way at all. But then when I went to university, I got involved with the Christian Union. That was really encouraging, inspiring. They had a mission week soon after I arrived at university. So I was involved in that. I hadn't really been involved in anything like that before. And that really built my faith up through university. And then from then on, in terms of my faith, I felt more and more drawn towards moral issues, looking at God's will in the political sphere as well. So when I came to Scotland, that became, a stronger and stronger thing. And then for the last sort of 10 years or so, that became a big focus of my Christian life, having a lot of letters published in newspapers, articles, debating with various politicians, debating with Muslims, secularists, sort of angry atheists, all sorts. I really felt that was the direction God was pointing me into, and that's what led me to where I am today.
Oh wow, Salvationist. Mm-hmm. Okay, I never heard the term before. So there you go. They're very much involved up in the island here locally, the Salvation Army as well.
Yes, I've seen that in a couple of places, yeah.
And they're one of these organisations I don't think get the credit that they deserve, because they're very much involved in stuff. I was going to say use a term, don't beat their own drum that much, but they do a lot of work. And they're a worldwide organisation. It's an incredible...
it's a massive organisation. The work they do worldwide is huge in many, many countries. And I think their combination of social action and the church gospel presentation as well I think it's a powerful model for other churches. Well, like any denomination, any group of churches has its strengths, has its weaknesses, has its issues. It's the same there. But I think there's a lot to be learned with the Salvation Army. In Scotland, I went to a Church of Scotland church for quite a long period while I was in Scotland, but that closed. It sort of merged with another one, but effectively closed. But then the church building was bought by a New Frontiers church. New Frontiers is a network of churches based in the south of England, but I think they've got 6 or 7 in Scotland now. So we stayed in the same building under new management, which is quite an unusual experience. So the new church came in, they refurbished the building, and we're now part of that church, which is quite different than before. We joked that we were included in the deal when they bought the building. Myself, my wife, and another couple of people as well.
So where do you stay now?
Still in Edinburgh, in Collington.
You're in Collington, all right. Mm-hmm. Okay, so from what age were you when you became a Christian?
I was 16.
16?
16, yeah.
Okay, so like you said, it's quite funny when you hear that. You know, the bit I can really relate to the bit about where, you know, you were saying, you know, this Christian thing. I'm going to have to watch what don't know if I want to be this, because there's going to be stuff expected of me, and I don't know if that's what I want to do at this moment in time. And I think that tends to be a big hurdle, isn't it? It's a huge hurdle, because I think the tendency up here, and I know very much so from my own youth, was that you kind of think, it's something you do when you're older. You know, it's not like a young person's thing, which is totally seen from a totally different angle now, because of the way the youth are and the thriving youth that there is in many churches on the island here. But there was that kind of thing in that, it's an old guy's game. You know, I've got plenty of time for this when I'm 50 plus. You know, that's when you do that. For the rest of the time, forget it, and I'm going to enjoy my life, because that's what it's all about. So that bit pretty much summed it up, and the bit about I want my money back. You know, because you get that. You know, even when you become a Christian, you kind of think, what now? You know, like exactly what you say. If there was no flashing lights, and if there's no kind of real kind of awakening kind of thing.
I think God gave me what I needed in that situation. At that point, I needed to hear something. There needed to be some directions, some affirmation about my decision. I think God gave me just what I needed at the time that I needed it, and that set me off on there.
Yeah, I was listening to a recording. And as usual, my memory, as soon as I started mentioning this, I've gone blank on what I was actually going. The basis of it was it was a man that had written a well-known hymn, that well-known that I've just forgotten what it was, but it was a well-known hymn, and he'd backslidden, right, really backslidden, and he was on a train journey, and while he was on the train journey, he was sitting in a kind of cabin area on his own, and somebody else, another passenger, comes in, and the passenger sits down, and the passenger is singing his hymn, and that's when he awoke again, and that drew him back down the Christian path again, because of and he believed that God had used that God had put this man into his cabin, singing joyfully the hymn, unbeknown to the man. The man didn't have a clue that he was singing this hymn next to the person that had actually written the hymn. And I can't. I'll have to find. I'm annoyed now, because it's a well-known hymn, and that's the beauty of these messages, and the way God uses people to send the messages. So
at just the right time, at the time when we really needed it. I think sometimes, certainly I do, sort of look for God to speak to me at times when maybe there isn't a particularly vital message to deliver, but the times are the key times of decision, when you're looking at which direction your life's going to go. I find that's the time when there's suddenly clarity, there's suddenly something that's unmistakable, and it's God's voice, and you know which direction to set off on.
I think it was Come Thou Font that whoever had written that. So so you what career path did you go down when you were so you've been in your teenage years, you become a Christian?
So I went to university, studied electronic systems engineering.
Okay.
I was very interested in that sort of thing. I was sort of techie, so I enjoyed that. It was good. I was sponsored by British Telecom, which was a great scheme. They paid me a reasonable amount of money, gave me all sorts of good training in the holidays. But by the end of my university course, I realised that wasn't what I wanted to do longer term. So at the end of university, I wasn't sure. I thought, should I do a conversion to be a lawyer or an accountant or who knows what? At the end, I did the teaching course for a year, really enjoyed it, and then applied for jobs all over the country, and ended up getting a job in a small boarding school on the Isle of Wight, which was a total change for me, having been in Stoke-on-Trent, and then in Birmingham, sort of big city, maybe not the most attractive way in some ways. I think it's a lot better now. But then I went and lived on the Isle of Wight, which is a different world for me, quite rural, and I absolutely loved it. I love teaching. I love being in the boarding school as well. You really get to know the kids very, very well. And I could run a little Christian Union group. Used to be in my flat. Lots of kids would come along. I could do chapel services. They used to have a morning chapel service most days. They had Sunday chapel services. So I had the opportunity to speak in those, do various fun and games. I organised a mission week there. So I felt a really fruitful time in terms of ministry. So during that period of my life, that was my total focus of my Christian ministry was within the school. There were a lot of opportunities. I think that's quite a while ago now. I think those sort of opportunities probably don't exist in many schools now. Things have changed. But at that stage, there were great opportunities. I saw a lot of young people come to know God. I think moved on in their faith as well. It was very encouraging.
Okay, yeah. So how long were you in the Isle of Wight?
Only 3 years.
2 years. Okay.
3 years.
3 years. Right.
I've been back on holiday about 15 times since.
Okay.
Just there for 3 years.
Left its mark. And where did you move from there? Is this when you came to...
from there I came to Edinburgh.
Edinburgh.
In 1995.
Teaching as well?
Yep. So I looked for teaching jobs around the country. I applied for jobs all over, but I felt God speak to me very strongly that I should come to Edinburgh. I was actually offered a job in Stamford School, a very, very good school in a lovely place in England. And I was offered that job. They actually phoned me up while I was having my interview in Edinburgh at the school and tried to sort of bounce me into agreeing to it and not going through with the interview there. But I really felt that God had spoken to me that Edinburgh was where I was supposed to be heading. So I declined that job and was offered the job in Edinburgh. Then I taught there for 24 years or something.
Wow.
Quite a while. So 8 years as a housemaster as well. That's quite an experience.
Okay. What's a housemaster?
In a boarding school, the boarders are in boarding houses, which is the building where they basically live. So they have the lessons in the conventional school classrooms, but they have the boarding house where they live. The person in charge of the boarding house is the housemaster.
Okay.
There'll be lots of other staff helping as well. But the housemaster sort of lives in that building or right next to that building. And they're the one with overall responsibility for looking after all these boys. So liaising with their parents, dealing with their pastoral issues, academic issues, arranging activities with them.
All right.
And just generally being around.
Okay.
So lots and lots of fun doing that. Again, lots of good opportunities. I could do a Christian Union meeting on a Wednesday night. So at some stages, virtually all the boarders in the boarding house would come along in their pyjamas and sit in the day room. And we look at a Bible story.
Okay.
Christian teaching. It was great. Lots of fun things as well. I mean, I used to do something like one night a year we used to turn the boarding house into a prison camp. So the prefects would act as guards, and the teachers would be guards, and it would be like a sort of escape from Colditz type night. Okay. And the boys had to make a plan and steal various bits of apparatus and escape from the building and go running across the campus, at 10:30 at night with people chasing them with searchlights and all things like that. I mean, great. I think I probably enjoyed it more than the boys. It was a great job. So many facets to it. So many things I enjoyed. I enjoyed the opportunities to speak about faith, and I enjoyed just the time with the boys and doing lots of fun activities, taking them out for hikes in the hills at night time, and just all sorts of fun things. It was great.
Yeah. So 24 years you were in Edinburgh.
I was housemaster for 8 years. So I was at the school for 8 years. I was housemaster for 8 years, and then I did 8 years after just teaching.
Okay.
After I was a housemaster. During the 8 years after I was a housemaster, that's when I started to engage in more debating, speaking, writing from a Christian perspective. Yeah.
Okay. Right, we're going to have your first piece of music, and you have chosen When I Survey the Wondrous Cross. So we'll have this. This particular version is a live one. It's from a gentleman by the name of Tim Hughes. I think Tim Hughes you can hear regularly on UCB radio if you listen to that at all. I think he tends to kind of do some wee preaching and singing on UCB regularly. After that, we'll have a reading from you, and we'll come back and find out why you chose that and why you chose that particular reading. So for now, we're going to listen to Tim Hughes and When I Survey the Wondrous Cross.
When I survey the wondrous cross on which the Prince of Glory died, my riches gain
That's always been a favourite of mine, that hymn. I think that there's two things about it. The first thing, it gets to the heart of the matter. It's full of truth, the biblical truth about the gospel. But in addition to that, it's got this sense of wonder. And it helps us to form the right response to that. So there's an amazement that we should feel about the way God's reached out to us, the sacrifice that was made to us. So that's always been a favourite hymn of mine. Right, a Bible reading. I picked a couple of Bible readings to have a look at. When someone says pick a favourite Bible reading or two, obviously there's lots to choose from. But I've picked a couple. I've picked ones that are related to my current experience of being involved in politics. Now, the first one I've chosen, I'd bet a fair amount that no one's chosen this one before on the show. It's Leviticus 19.
Oh, no.
And I find this interesting. I'm going to read some sections of it in a minute, but it's headed in the version of the Bible I've got here. It says various laws. And then the Old Testament law can get a bad press sometimes among Christians. There's sort of the feeling that the great thing about the Old Testament law is that it doesn't apply anymore and that we've moved on from it, which is true in a sense. The relationship between the Old Testament law and the gospel and our experience as Christians, it's a complex question. But I find looking at this passage, it gives us an insight into God's heart, the things that God thinks are important, and God's view of a society. And in this passage, it mixes together religious teaching, but also other teaching about what's important in structuring our society and the way we're supposed to live together. And I find it quite inspiring as a basis for being involved in politics, because it shows the breadth of God's interests. So even if we're dealing with areas that might seem quite mundane and practical, there's still areas where God's will has an impact on them. So I'll just read a few sections. So it's Leviticus 19. The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the entire assembly of Israel and say to them, 'Be holy, because I, the Lord your God, am holy. Each of you must respect his mother and father and must observe my Sabbaths. I am the Lord your God. Do not turn to idols or make gods of cast metal for yourselves. I am the Lord your God.'" So some spiritual teaching, also respect for parents. But then moving on. "When you reap the harvest of your land, do not reap to the very edges of your field, or gather the gleanings of your harvest. Do not go over your vineyard a second time, or pick up the grapes that have fallen. Leave them for the poor and the alien. I am the Lord your God." So a system to ensure provision for the poor, for the needy. "Do not steal, do not lie, do not deceive one another. Do not defraud your neighbour or rob him. Do not hold back the wages of a hired man overnight. Do not curse the deaf or put a stumbling block in front of the blind. But fear your God, I am the Lord. Do not pervert justice. Do not show partiality to the poor or favoritism to the great, but judge your neighbour fairly. Do not go about spreading slander among your people. Do not do anything that endangers your neighbour's life. I am the Lord." The health and safety regulations, who would have thought that the Bible would have anything to say about that? But it's saying this is an important thing. We need to not endanger each other. "Do not hate your brother in your heart. Rebuke your neighbour frankly, so that you will not share his guilt." I mean, hatred is something that they're trying to deal with in Scottish politics at the moment. It's quite a hot topic. What's God got to say here? Do not hate your brother in your heart. It's in the heart that the change has got to come from. Do not seek revenge or bear a grudge against one of your people, but love your neighbour as yourself. I am the Lord. Do not degrade your daughter by making her a prostitute, or the land will turn to prostitution and be filled with wickedness. Again, prostitution is an issue that's been talked about in Scottish politics at the moment. Observe my Sabbaths and have reverence for my sanctuary. I am the Lord. Do not turn to mediums or seek out spiritists, for you will be defiled by them, for I am the Lord. Rise in the presence of the aged and show respect for the elderly and revere your God. I am the Lord. So it's mixing in the teaching of the spiritual teaching about spiritual dangers and honouring God with proper relationships with each other as well. When an alien lives with you in your land, do not ill-treat him. The alien living with you must be treated as one of your native born. Love him as yourself, for you were aliens in Egypt. I am the Lord your God. Again, a hot political topic. Different communities living in harmony and treating people coming to the country as well. Do not use dishonest standards when measuring lengths, weights or quantities. Use honest scales and honest weights. An honest ephah and an honest hin. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt. Okay, honesty in business transactions. Keep all my decrees and all my laws, follow them. I am the Lord. So this is the main message I take from that. And I take encouragement that a lot of the issues that I might be focusing on in the political sphere, they are things that God's interested in. These are not something apart from my mission as a Christian. These are part of bringing about a society the way God wants it to be.
Okay, and you were right. I've never had that read before.
But never have it again.
Yeah, wow. So, from that, and thanks for the music as well. We've got another 2 or 3 selections of music between now and the end of the show. So thank you for reading the Leviticus and the explanations there. But how do you, from being a teacher, and I know you said you were sending in some letters, and in the latter years, over the last 8-year period there, that you started kind of writing in more, taking on politicians more, confronting them on some of the decisions, some of the actions, all that kind of stuff. How does that then evolve from a few letters and the thinking starting to come along, tick-tock in the head, and a few friends, and then there's a new party created?
Right, that's a good question. During the period when I was writing, debating, speaking from a Christian perspective, I tend to be drawn more towards the moral issues, the political issues. I would debate like the existence of God, things like that, or I talk about evolution sometimes, intelligent design, those sort of issues. But the things I was feeling more drawn to were the political, the moral issues. And a lot of people were saying to me, you should go into politics. And I thought about that. I thought that that's something I wanted to do as well. I think it's one thing to be commentating and campaigning, but ultimately in our political system, we're a democracy. And ultimately the way things are influenced is through the democratic process, with people being in the parliament expressing views. So I felt that's what I wanted to do. I felt that's what I was called to do. So I looked at the different options for that. And I looked at the different parties. I looked at some of their histories of what had happened to people with my sort of views in those parties. I mean, for example, in the 2010 election, there was a candidate in Scotland to be an MP. I won't mention which party he was with, but he was on the list to be a candidate. It came out during the election campaign that he'd made a comment about human sexuality. I looked at the comment that he made. It maybe wasn't quite the way I'd have worded it, but he was basically saying what I believed and what I'd said publicly on many, many occasions. So when it came out that this candidate had made this comment, the party leader just chopped him immediately. He was immediately deselected, and that was the end of his political career, and he didn't stand in the election. So that if I get involved in a party, this is what's going to happen. If I join one of the mainstream parties, this is probably what's going to happen to me. So I thought there's no point. I thought I'm not going to join a party, spend 2 years getting to know everyone, delivering leaflets, going through a selection process, because I know I'm effectively running at a brick wall. Because the things I'm on record as saying, views about human sexuality or Islam or be very pro-life or whatever, it's not possible to enter into politics with those sort of views anymore with a mainstream party. So I thought, is there any party that would have me? So I looked at the options in Scotland. The only other party I thought might have me was maybe UKIP. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the EU. That's not a family party policy. Though personally, I'm not a fan of the EU. But UKIP present themselves as the antidote to political correctness. So I thought, I might not agree with them on everything. They don't agree with me on a lot of moral issues, but at least it might be a party where I could exist, where I might be accepted and be able to be part of it. So I joined UKIP, and I gave a speech to the Edinburgh branch one evening about freedom of speech. And I talked about lots of different areas. And one of the things I touched on was the way opponents of same-sex marriage have been treated in Scotland, or mistreated, should I say. And David Coburn, who was the leader of UKIP in Scotland at the time, he was gay, and his partner was in the meeting. And at the end of my talk, this partner sort of went hysterical, saying it was homophobic and this, that, and the other, which was completely ridiculous. I was just talking about freedom of speech. I even said during my talk at several points, I said, it doesn't matter which side of the fence of this argument you're on. My point here is freedom of speech. So he turned on me. So David Coburn, in charge of UKIP, turned on me. And they did everything they could short of getting me kicked out of the party. So I pretty soon got to the stage with UKIP of realising that I can't even exist here, and not even in UKIP can they accept someone with my views, which I would say were sort of orthodox Christian views. Now, I've been involved with a group of people for quite a few years who talked about the possibility of starting a new party, and it hadn't quite got off the ground for various reasons. But after that experience, when I thought there really were no open doors in terms of other parties like that in Scotland, I thought the only way forward is to start something new. So I mulled that over for a while, and then it came down to one evening. I remember it was a September evening, and I went for a walk down in the woods by the river near to where I live. And God spoke to me very clearly. And when I went on my walk, I wasn't quite sure of the way forward. And when I got back, I was sure that God was calling me to take the initiative and bring into being a new party. So with a group of people involved from the beginning, that was great. But I decided I would take the lead and drive it forward and create the Scottish Family Party. And that's what's happened. So we've been operating for about 18 months now. And I feel that I'm fulfilling a calling in doing this. I'm really enjoying it. It's very exciting. And I'm really, really grateful to have such a clear vision in my life. I think at some points in my life, you'd be wondering whether I should be doing one thing or another. But I'm really enjoying the situation at the moment when I feel like I know exactly what God's wanting me to do and is supporting me in doing it.
Wow. So a wee walk, and that's it confirmed in your head with that. That's the way you've.
I think my logic was saying that this is the way forward, because it seemed to make sense in terms of I tried other avenues. It seemed as if it needed someone to take the initiative. I felt I was in a position to do that. So all the pieces seemed in place, but the confirmation, as a spiritual confirmation, I think, came on that one particular occasion. And that set me off in this direction. So here we are today.
So how do you, and I don't know, I've never thought about it and never given it much thought, because you just go, you mentioned UKIP and all these other parties there. How do you actually go about creating a party? How does it become official, if you like, that there is this party?
Right. But the official side is to register with the Electoral Commission. That's actually quite a straightforward thing to do. I mean, there are hundreds and hundreds of parties registered with the Electoral Commission. It costs a bit of money. You fill a big form in, but that's not a huge hurdle to get over. The much bigger issue is attracting attention to the party, recruiting supporters. I think I already had quite a network of people who would be interested in this sort of side of things. I mean, initially, before the party was launched, it was basically my contact, my network of people, which were mainly Christians. But the vision for the party was that it would reach far beyond the Christian constituency, because we think there are a huge number of people who are not Christians who are concerned about the direction society is heading, and they would want to see a change in direction. So since the party's launched, we've seen a lot of people who are not Christians wanting to get involved as well, becoming activists and taking on positions in the party, which was very definitely our vision.
Okay. So you had a meeting. Like I say, this is a pre-recorded show. You had a meeting on Monday night.
Yes, sir.
That was in the Cala, and you've got another couple of meetings here. You've got tonight. There's been Tuesday and
Yes,
Wednesday night. So where are you in Tuesday? Where are you tonight?
Tuesday at Barberson Brew Community Centre and North Locks Community Centre.
And so it's just the three meetings on the island. This
Three
time around.
meetings, yes, sir.
Yeah. So have you? That's the island side. Are you going through other kind of the Highlands, or is that planned at a future date?
Yes, I've been to lots of different places around Scotland. Basically, if someone expresses an interest and invites us, then we'll go. That's what's happened here. Someone got in touch, said, would you like to come and speak to people here? So the answer to that question is always yes. Wherever it comes from in Scotland, we'll go along. So it was fantastic to be invited over to Lewis. I really enjoyed the meetings here. The meeting last night was great. But we've got independent branches now operating in Peterhead, in Glasgow, and in central Scotland, so Stirling and Falkirk. So my plan is I will keep going to a place until the point where sort of local leadership emerges. So if someone's wanting to get involved, to take the initiative to become a sort of branch chairman, then it can start operating more independently in an area. But I've been to Kirkcaldy, Aberdeen, Dundee, Perth, was down in Ayr. The other week we had meetings in Edinburgh, West Lothian. Scotland's a big place when I start travelling around. I've been to lots of places I hadn't been before, but we're just trying to set up independent branches in as many places as we can.
So is it a Scottish-based party? It is a
Yes.
Scottish, yeah.
Yeah.
So that would be like they were like an MSP type thing. You'd be.
Yeah, our big target is the Scottish elections, because the Scottish electoral system gives small parties a chance. 5 or 6% of the vote in a region puts you in with a chance of getting an MSP elected. Under the Westminster system, small parties really haven't got any chance.
No.
I mean, you might influence what's going to happen just by shifting the political debate or frightening the other parties, and they might just try and cover you off a little bit with their policies. But in Scotland, there is actually the opportunity to have MSPs in the Parliament, and we think the impact of that would be colossal. And we think there's a lot of issues, a lot of viewpoints that are not expressed in the Parliament. We think if they were put in there, even if just 1 or 2 MSPs from the Scottish Family Party, we think that would shift the central gravity of debate very significantly. And a lot of issues that are currently not seen as part of the political agenda, they would come onto the agenda. They'd be discussed in the media, and it would open up the national debate. That's what we want to do.
Okay. We spoke before we came on here there that one of the regular visitors to the show tends to be, whenever he's up, he's in, is Nigel Kenny from the Christian Institute, and Nigel, of course, flies the flag big style for a lot of stuff that's happening from a Christian perspective, various bills and stuff that are on the horizon, and highlighting exactly what they mean, because sometimes, as we've spoken about very often when Nigel's been in, is that these things tend to just go unnoticed, and it's a tendency for people not to attend consultations and stuff, and then all of a sudden that's it. It's happened. It's legislation, and there's nothing you can do about it at that point. So they do a great job, and I think you did actually. So you know Nigel quite well.
Yes, the Christian Institute do a fantastic job and amazing work. But they monitor what's going on. They draw people's attention to it. They campaign, and the other thing they've done is to launch legal challenges to aspects of legislation. There, the Ashes Bakery case in Northern Ireland was a big one. And then the named person scheme in Scotland, that was a huge success as well. So I think the Christian Institute, they're a charity, they come at the things from that angle. So the aspect that they're not involved in is, or can't be involved in because they're a charity, is to actually put people in the Parliament to express their views. So for example, if there's a policy going through the Parliament and the Christian Institute can see that there's something wrong with it, then they can alert people, they can maybe make a legal challenge to it. But the ultimate way in a democracy, the way things would happen ideally, is you'd have politicians in the Parliament who would be raising these issues within the Parliament, would be making these challenges in the Parliament. Because at the moment, I would say, in my opinion, the Parliament and the government are often coming to the wrong conclusions, they're heading in the wrong direction, and the Christian Institute has been able, for example, with the named person scheme, to clip their wings and to put things back in a healthier direction. But that's obviously not the ideal. We don't want the governments to be able to push in the wrong direction and then the Christian Institute have to try and put things right from the outside. We'd like to be able to be a voice within the Parliament to try and correct these things at an earlier stage.
Yeah. And that's the missing ingredient, I suppose, to an extent. Yeah. So, are you hoping? What's your? So, would you? You're a founder of the party. So, would you be a candidate? Would you be standing for election yourself?
I will certainly be a candidate. There are 8 regions in Scotland. That would be our main focus. I'm expecting at the moment that I will be the candidate in the Edinburgh and Lothians region, which is probably not the most fertile ground for the Scottish Family Party. So a possible outcome at the 2021 election might be that we have a couple of MSPs from, who knows, Highlands and Islands, northeast of Scotland, which is maybe where we'd have more natural support. So the result might be that we have a couple of MSPs, but I'm not one of them. But we'll see. Yeah. We'll see how that goes. I think to present yourself as a candidate in an area where you haven't got personal contact, it's not where you're based. I think there are a lot of disadvantages with that. I would say with the Western Isles constituency as well, I think that's maybe one of a very small number of constituencies where maybe in the at some point it might be feasible to have a candidate for the constituency as well, who might be in with a chance of success.
Okay.
There's not many constituencies where I think that might be realistic, but possibly with a good local candidate that might be feasible.
Yeah.
We shall see.
So is this there's obviously a journey to be had here, right? There's already a Christian party, isn't there? Is it a Scottish Christian party? Or?
There is, the Scottish Christian Party has been around for quite a while.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll give this is my personal opinion. I mean, I know Donald Boyd. I've met him a few times. I've been involved in events with him. But I've got a lot of respect for the Christian Party.
Okay.
I've voted for them in the past. In fact, one election I remember going into the polling booth, I was intending to vote for one party. But then when I realised that they were standing, I didn't know anything about them. I just saw the name.
Okay.
I thought, well, that's probably closer to what I think than all the other parties. So I've voted for them myself. I think our approach is different in two important ways. The Christian Party obviously is very definitely Christian. I think to be a member, you need a reference from the minister, and its appeal is designed specifically for Christians. Whereas we think that the message we've got appeals much, much more broadly. We think people who are not Christians is a bigger constituency for us of support than people who are Christians. So that's one important difference. The other thing is just the philosophy of approaching politics. My view is politics shouldn't be about a Christian party versus a Muslim party versus a secularist party versus whatever else, a feminist party, an LGBT party. I don't think that's a helpful way to conduct politics on a sort of identity basis. I think politics is about policies, so we put forward the policies that we think are the best ones for the future of the country. Then anyone who agrees with those policies can support us no matter what religious or beliefs or sort of identity they come from. They're quite important differences. The other thing I'd say with the Christian Party, I think it's had a lot. It's been very active at some points. I think at the moment its level of activity perhaps isn't so high. I think in terms of momentum, the Scottish Family Party is growing pretty quickly. We're quite new. We're offering something new. I think we've got a bit of momentum there.
Okay.
So the Christian Party, we've got a lot of respect for them, but ultimately I think our approach is something new. We see it as having a lot of potential in Scotland.
Okay. So that's interesting. So that's where it comes from. You're saying is it 8 regions that you said at the moment? Yeah. Okay. And when are the next election? The Scottish elections?
2021.
2021. So there's a fair
2 and a bit years.
Yeah. So a lot of work to be done in not that much a time, really. Because 2.5 years isn't massive when you're trying to develop something.
It's a mountain to climb. It's an absolute mountain to climb. I mean, the 5 or 6% sounds like quite a modest figure, but that's talking. In most regions, that could be 15, 20, 25,000 votes.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people. In terms of all growth in various areas, the graph gets steeper and steeper.
Okay.
So sometimes you feel like it's quite hard work in various areas. Other times you feel like there's a bit of momentum gathering. Things are really taking off. But the overall picture is that the upwards curve is getting steeper. And so we just keep working away at all the things we do. I mean, social media is great for us because we can reach a lot of people relatively cheaply. So Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, then having meetings around the country as well. And we look for opportunities in the mainstream media. That's quite tough, but we take the opportunities that we can, even if it's in letters or articles published. We're also looking at things that might attract a bit of attention to the party as well, in terms of maybe stunts isn't the right word, but just doing things that will get a bit of attention as well, get a bit of media attention.
Okay, and how does this whole process just now, what you're going through, going round Highlands and Islands and various other places that you've been to, how does that fit in with your family life, your work life, your where are you at just now?
Well, I finished teaching in the summer.
Okay.
But basically, I've been saying for years and years, I was never going to be able to retire from teaching because I'll probably be struck off.
So you are retiring, or you have retired? Sorry.
I wouldn't call it retirement, but I finished teaching.
You finished? All right.
So I'm not
finished teaching.
anymore.
All right.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
But I was never going to retire at 67 from teaching on current trajectory, because the things I say, which I would say are just conventional Christian teaching or just conservative moral opinions, our society is becoming increasingly intolerant of them. And at the moment, I could be struck off by the General Teaching Council for Scotland before too long that they're pursuing a case against me at the moment. So in the longer term, teaching wasn't an option. But in any case, rather than stay in teaching until finally, I get struck off and my teaching career is finished, I thought someone needs to fight back against it. That's what I decided to do instead. So instead of spending however many years, I didn't know how long it would take before my teaching career was over, I thought I'm going to take the fight to them instead in the best way possible in a democracy.
So is this because of your beliefs, because of what you're putting forward?
Yeah, at the moment, the General Teaching Council for Scotland have been investigating me for, it's not far off a year now, and they still haven't actually put to me what I've said that was wrong.
Okay.
They said it was making intolerant, prejudiced and discriminatory comments. Putting two and two together, I'm virtually certain it's because I said that ideally kids should be brought up by their mum and dad.
Okay.
And that it's not ideal to bring children into existence deliberately, knowing that they're not going to have a father.
All right.
To be brought up by two mothers, for example, which I think is a perfectly reasonable, widely held view. But I'm assuming that's what the complaints are about. So I don't know yet how long.
So that's ongoing.
And I think that this issue is very important. I was speaking to some teachers last night, different teachers around Scotland, who are increasingly concerned that they can't in good conscience teach some of the messages that the government's expecting them to deliver. And I think some people are worried about even going into the teaching profession. The way things are heading, we'll be at the stage soon where people with sort of orthodox Christian beliefs won't be able to be a doctor, a teacher, a social worker, basically anything working for the government, because they'll be required to express support for views that they can't in good conscience endorse.
Okay.
And it won't be long before we're there. So I think for our children, if they're talking about being a doctor or a teacher when they're older, I think we ought to be thinking to ourselves, well, on current trajectory, that isn't going to be able to happen. And I think that's quite a sobering thought.
Okay. So your party, the new party, will be looking at addressing these things, making these better known, fighting the fight.
Yeah. Freedom of speech is one of our big issues. I feel that the window of opportunity for a party like the Scottish Family Party, it might be quite short, because already freedom of speech is under attack. How many years is it going to be before a party such as ours wouldn't be allowed to register with the Electoral Commission, wouldn't be allowed to have a Facebook page, can't have a YouTube channel, wouldn't get any mention? It might even become illegal. Facebook have made complaints to us already. They said a post we put up was hate speech, which was completely mad and completely ridiculous. It was just a post questioning the logic of transgender Scotland and saying what they were saying didn't make sense. So I assume what happened was Transgender Scotland complained to Facebook. So Facebook says it's hate speech, gives us a warning and takes it off. So at the moment, we can function reasonably freely. Okay, hotels might cancel our bookings and we get called all sorts and Facebook gives us warnings or whatever. So you can see this warning signs, but we can still basically do what we want to do. Give it a few years, and I think that won't necessarily be the case.
Okay.
So I think we need to really grasp the opportunity while we've got it.
Okay. I'm going to move on to some more music. And the next one you chose was Lo He Could with Clouds Descending. Is that what it was?
Lo He Comes with Clouds Descending, yes.
Yeah. So, for some strange reason, the version that I actually had decided on, we decided on, it's vanished. So I'm going for another one.
Right, okay.
All right.
That's a hymn that's normally associated with Advent, but I think its message is powerful all year round. And I think that's the main thing I would take for it, is it gives us a perspective on God's power and majesty, and also a hope and confidence in the future. I just find it inspiring to hear that and to sing it, to realise that we're part of something so big, that God's almighty and powerful, and we're part of his unfolding plan in the present and into the future.
Excellent. And do you have a reading for us?
I do, yeah. I've picked another reading that's relevant to my current experience in politics, and it's from James chapter 1. Trials and Temptations is headed here. Consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. If any of you lacks wisdom, he should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to him. But he who asks must believe and not doubt, because he who doubts is like a wave in the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. That man should not think he will receive anything from the Lord. He's a double-minded man, unstable in all he does. Now, the reason I chose that one, there's two themes that come through it. The first one is, consider it pure joy whenever you face trials of many kinds. Now, in the Scottish Family Party, we do face trials because we face some pretty fierce opposition. People call us all sorts and try and disrupt our events. It can be quite difficult to deal with that. I think I'm very thick-skinned, I think, as part of the job description for being involved in a party like the Scottish Family Party. But we do have this constant torrent of, some of it is nothing short of abuse, and then the disruption as well. So from this passage, it's saying, that's normal. This is something that's going to happen. And when it happens, consider it a source of joy, because in a sense that it shows that the truth has been presented. When the truth has been presented, there will be opposition to that. That doesn't mean that every time someone disagrees with you, they must be wrong, and it shows that we're right. But I think the big picture is that God's saying that we can expect this sort of opposition. But then the second part's very relevant as well. Because saying in response to that, we should ask for wisdom, because the way we respond to it can be quite tricky. There's a whole spectrum of possible responses. Sometimes it might be the best thing to give as good as we get and enter into a robust debate. Sometimes it's best to try and have a chat behind the scenes. Sometimes it's best to just ignore something and let it pass. So I think we really do need God's wisdom in the family party. And that's certainly something personally that I ask for in my role. Just giving an illustration of that, while we've been over here at Hebridean Pride, local LGBT campaigning group, have been on our case, making all sorts of accusations and saying all sorts of things, which is routine. But hopefully after I've finished this recording here, I'm going to meet one of the people from it, not in an official capacity, but they were saying all sorts on Facebook. I just put on Facebook, how about having a chat about this face to face? Maybe that would help. And one of the people said, okay. So when we finish this recording, I'm going along and meet them and we'll have a chat. I mean, who knows? Maybe they'll be very angry. Maybe we won't be able to make any progress, but maybe we will. Maybe there'll be some understanding there that we can reach. So I think God's encouragement to face the trials, to face the opposition, is really good. I think I get that through the scriptures very powerfully, but also the need for God's wisdom in how to respond to that.
Okay. Yeah. So, well, that's good, and it's good to talk. You need to talk about these things. You can't just be firing stuff at each other or one way or whichever way it goes. It's good to talk about these things. And there's points of view that need to be heard, points of view need to be discussed, and face-to-face is probably always the best way to do that. Yeah.
I think for most people, they've never heard on many issues, what I would say, sort of our side of the argument, if you like. Because if you just watch TV, mainstream media, everyone's familiar with the arguments on the other side of many of these issues, but they're completely unfamiliar. And so they've just got a sort of straw man, just a demonized version of socially conservative views. So when people actually hear someone presenting them in a reasonable manner, it's quite often it's an eye-opener for them. So any opportunity to discuss or debate I think is generally fruitful for us because people have already heard the other side, but where we get the opportunity to put forward the other view, that can be quite powerful.
Okay. So you're talking about elections, Scottish elections, 2.5 years' time. Is there some point where you have to start kind of forward planning this whole process over the next 2 years, or is there a short-term plan just now, and then when it becomes into election year or something, that's when you have to up the ante, or how do you go about planning all that?
That's a good question. Most of the parties, I think, just go through their usual functioning. Then when it comes quite close to election time, a few months to election time, they'll select candidates and all of their party machinery is ready to swing into action for their campaigning season. We may be taking a longer view and that we'd be willing to appoint candidates a long time in advance of the election. So if there's a local candidate emerged, even at this point, I think if we're really confident in them, we would declare that they were the candidate and then give them 2 years to basically to promote the party in the area, to make connections, to effectively start campaigning now. I mean, the established parties have got lots of huge advantages in terms of media presence, in terms of staff and resources. But on the other hand, current MSPs, they're busy with the day job a lot of the time, whereas we're not busy with a political day job. All of what we're doing is campaigning. So we'll be happy to appoint people. And I think that would be quite an inspiring challenge for someone to know that you've got 2 days, you know the constituency that you're trying to reach, not 2 days, sorry, 2 years, you know the constituency you're trying to reach, and you've got that long-term project in order to make a breakthrough in that area. So yeah, we'd be willing to appoint candidates at this stage where the right people come forward.
Right, okay. So you're here for 3 days. You've had 1 day. Like I said, this is a pre-recorded show. You've got 2 days ahead of you. I take it you said you've done quite a few meetings prior to coming up to the islands here.
Yes,
and that. Yeah. So do you actually have you had heckling at your meetings and stuff? Does it tend to be kind of?
We just had one meeting where someone came along with a hostile view. They came to basically to tell us what they thought of us, and that they came in on the warpath. It was a meeting in West Lothian, but before too long, they realised that they'd come into a group of people who were going to be perfectly reasonable and welcoming, and just entered into discussion. And it was great. I mean, by the end, he wasn't a convert to the cause. He's never going to vote to us.
No.
I mean, his whole worldview was a million miles away from ours. But we had a good discussion. I think he would certainly not go away ready to be calling us all the names under the sun. So I think we welcome that. So if people come along, we'd rather people come along to discuss, and we think that's always going to be a positive thing. As the party grows in influence, I would expect that there are going to be disruptions at events. There'll be protesters, things. If you look at what happens online, quite often there'll be what seems to be an organised group of people will come onto Facebook or whatever to attack us. It was interesting when I put just a Facebook post up advertising the meetings on Lewis a few weeks ago. It was fascinating. About over 100 people liked the post, gave it a thumbs up or a heart or whatever, and maybe 15 people gave it an angry or a fed up face or whatever. But then if you look at the comments below, I deleted a lot of them, but if I'd have left them there, the comments below would have been about 3/4 negative. And it's interesting, that's often the case we find in Scotland, is that the impression you get by seeing what's going on, the impression is that almost everyone's against these sort of socially conservative views. But actually they're not. It's just the people who say most and are loudest and most aggressive and most committed to repeating their point time and time again. And they create the impression that they're the majority. And I think that's routine in Scotland. There was an event a few weeks ago where the Scottish Cabinet has a roadshow around Scotland. I went to a local one. You could ask the question. So I asked the question of Nicola Sturgeon about the smacking ban. We're opposed to the smacking ban. And it's surveys have shown quite clearly the majority, a substantial majority of people in Scotland are against the smacking ban. So I asked Nicola Sturgeon about it, and she replied that she thought it was a good thing for various reasons. And she got a huge rapturous round of applause for that. And I was left feeling, oh, I'm the odd one out here. I'm the one with the really unusual view. And you just have to remind yourself that I was actually speaking for the majority of people in Scotland. And yet on the day there, in that collection of people, you feel like you're the odd one out. Yeah. And I think maybe that puts people off. It makes people a bit reticent to express their views because you feel like you're the extremist, you're the weirdo, you're the one who's sort of off the normal spectrum. But we just have to remind ourselves that we're not. We're speaking for a huge number of people, a huge section of the population.
Yeah. So, okay, killer question here, right? Okay, Christian issues, right? You're fighting the fight for the likes of what you just mentioned there, and probably if you look at we mentioned Nigel Kenny and the Christian Institute earlier on. If you looked at the Christian Institute, he said, if you like, of things that they're dealing with would probably be similar issues to what you
substantial overlap.
Yeah. What about actual? If people were going to come to listen to you and they were thinking, yeah, but what about actual politics? What about what MPs go to the House of Commons or to the Scottish Parliament there to debate about day-to-day, stuff like cutting down hospital services, all these kind of things? Are you up for that? Are you up for that fight as well?
There's two answers to that. The first is a lot of these mainstream political issues. At the moment, there's 129 MSPs, and they're busy talking about those things. And that debate is going to go on just the same if we had a couple of MSPs in there. So there's a lot of debates that are aired publicly, and there's ample opportunity for different points of view to be brought in. Whereas we feel having a couple of people raising other really important issues. If you look at, for example, child poverty, I mean, that's an issue that gets debated in the Scottish Parliament. It's a very serious issue. And I think the MSPs are very sincere in trying to address that issue. And they come to it from various angles. The angle that never comes in is how can we encourage family stability? Because that's a massive factor in child poverty. So we would come in to bring in a different perspective into that debate. And there's lots of areas that, for example, they talk about mental health problems among young people. Again, they talk about it from lots of angles. But the point about relationship stability, bringing people up in stable families, which is a very important factor in this, wouldn't get a mention. So in a lot of these debates, we can enter into them, but we're not entering into them with the same views that are already being expressed. We're entering in with something new. I think that's very important. I think with the other issues, a lot of the mainstream issues, the Scottish Family Party is neutral, but that doesn't mean that our MSPs would have nothing to say. I think we'd come to the issues with an open mind, not with a sort of ideological presupposition. We'd look at the merits of the different options and vote accordingly. In a sense, we turn normal politics inside out, because take for example the Conservative Party or Labour or the SNP, on something like abortion, I've been pro-life. They say it's a matter of conscience for their MSPs. So the MSPs can decide to vote as they see fit. It's not a matter of party policy. Whereas on other things, like the tax rate, they'll say that is a matter of party policy, and you have to toe the line with that. Whereas we reverse things. So we say, like, protecting the unborn, that's something that's really important, so we make that a matter of party policy. When it comes to questions about the budget, then our MSPs would look at those and decide on merit. They'd weigh up the issues and would make a decision on that basis. So we're reversing things. So currently, issues where you can't vote for a party, there are no parties in the Scottish Parliament, for example, that are pro-life. So you can't vote for them in order to promote a pro-life agenda. But we would give people the opportunity to use their vote to promote a pro-life agenda. But if we were to take definite positions on lots of these other things, if we were to be a right-wing or a left-wing party, a unionist or a nationalist party, an EU or a Brexit party, then we'd be slicing across our potential support in lots of different directions, and we'd be left with a section of it that was insufficient to have MSPs elected. So what we try to do is be neutral on a lot of mainstream political issues, and make it our role to, say, fill the void in Scottish politics, to put in voices to raise the issues that are not currently addressed and bring in the viewpoints that are not currently expressed.
Okay. So, a long journey ahead, a tough journey ahead. You'll be looking for candidates, and I'm sure there'll be a process for choosing candidates and all that kind of stuff. How would you go about that? How would you define a process for choosing a candidate in an area? Have you got that in mind? Or
we haven't outlined a specific process yet. It certainly wouldn't just be myself. We've got an executive committee of 4 people at the heart of the party. We've got a sort of wider circle of activists as well who meet to discuss strategy. So that's something we would plan to do. So I think it's a very, very difficult job to select a candidate. But if you look at the other parties, I mean, they certainly make their mistakes, that they have candidates appointed and then find that they've said various outrageous things, or they do various outrageous things during the campaign. So I think we have to do a lot of research on someone, and you really have to get to know them well. You have to be very confident that they're going to be good. It's a bit like the sort of medical philosophy. First of all, do no harm. You want candidates that you're confident are not going to embarrass the party in any way. That's the number one criteria. And then you want someone who's going to be able to be articulate and to understand the issues, and going to be able to present them in a positive manner, and also to have the local connection as well. I think is very important. So they're the ingredients we're looking for.
Yeah, but and you know, I'm not being disrespectful to in any way whatsoever here, but it's like, you know, going into that environment, that political environment, and this is obviously something that's going to be down to the process. You know, you can get, I would imagine that you can get somebody that's really well known, right? But might not be geared up for the journey ahead. You know, if they were to be successful, that the journey in Holyrood would be quite a tough one. That's not going to be an easy game. You know, that's going to be a tough line to go down, and to be representing the Western Isles down at somewhere like Holyrood amongst seasoned politicians. That's a tough call. So it's
even to be a candidate, any candidate, I would really say to them, you need to count the cost.
Yeah.
And think clearly about what you're doing, because if you're a candidate for a political party, that's like on your online footprint, if you like, forever. And I've talked about the way things are heading. So I would say to someone, if it's, say, a young person, that bear in mind, if you stand as a candidate for the Scottish Family Party, that could well have career implications for you for the rest of your life. You might find there are career avenues that are no longer open to you.
Yeah, good point. I never even thought of that point.
You might find that your current career, you're going to run into issues. You might find hostility from people for years and years to come, and you need to count the cost. I would always encourage people to count the cost, but still act on their convictions, because we need people who are willing to stand up and to pay the price as necessary in order to stand up for what we see as truth and wisdom in politics. But you're right as well. Being in the Parliament, I think if we had MSPs in the Parliament, they would say things that would cause the Parliament to go into meltdown. They'd be called all sorts of things. I think I could imagine other MSPs calling them for them to be banned from the Parliament or whatever. It would be a difficult road. There would be a lot of media hostility. Media would be trying to dredge up any and every story, blow things up. They're trying to smear the name of anyone associated with the family party in the public eye. So yeah, people would need to count the cost, and that they'd need to be ready for that, and they'd need to feel that that's something that they're able to cope with.
Yeah. You've hit the nail right in the head there, because it will be tough, and like I say, it'll be interesting to see how it develops and how things move on, and indeed your meetings go over the next couple of nights here on the island.
Sorry, what was that, sir?
How the meetings go, and tonight, which is Tuesday night and Wednesday night, you're over in Barbas, and then you're over in the Lochs area. Over the next. Yeah. And so you're one down, 2 to go in the islands here, and I'm sure you'll be back a lot over the next couple of years. We're going to have another piece of music just now. You've chosen It's Well With My Soul. We're going to have that, and then we'll come back and have a chat about a bit more about you. a bit more about yourself and your family life, and how you're going to cope with this new life, if you like, this new addition to your own day-to-day living, and especially over the next 2.5 years. And we'll take it from there and see how we get on.
Like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever, my Lord, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. Though Satan should buffet, though trials should come, let this blessed assurance control, that Christ hath regarded my helpless estate, and hath shed his own blood for my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. My sin, oh, the bliss of this glorious thought. My sin, not in part, but the whole, is nailed to the cross, and I bear it no more. Praise the Lord, oh my soul. It is well with 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 my
It is well with my soul. And that was Audrey Assad singing that one. And your reason for...
I think it just reminds us that no matter what's happening in our life, no matter what's happening in the world, that we've got something at the centre of our being, in our soul, that's stable and unchangeable and sort of inviolable, something that we can always rely on no matter what. I can't remember the details of the history of the writer of that, but I remember someone wrote it having experienced some sort of personal tragedy. And I think that reassurance of that solid foundation in our life, no matter what happens externally, is a really powerful thing, and it's a really important part of our walk as Christians.
Okay. So, is it well with your soul?
It is.
It is. Good, because you've got a tough journey ahead of you. You know, we were talking about that off here there. You know, it's like you and, you know, a handful of people are at the top of the tree here.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be going like that tree is going to get shaken.
Yeah. I've realised over the years that I'm a bit weird in one sense. I'm an unusual person. You know, if there's 10 people in the room and I think one thing and all the other 9 think something else, then I think that's just great. I love it.
Okay.
And that sort of discussion, a lively debate, that's ideal for me. I thrive in that sort of environment. But realise most people are not like that. Most people would find that really uncomfortable. That's really not what they'd want. I used to find it interesting when I was teaching. I'd go to various courses, and the person would be delivering the course, and I'd often put my hand up and say, well, I'm not sure about this is the best approach. I think maybe there's another way of looking at this. And there'd be this sort of uncomfortable silence that someone had challenged the message, and the person delivering it would be a bit taken aback, and they'd just sort of answer me very briefly and carry on. But then we'd get to break time, everyone had their cup of tea, and I'd go to the gents, and everyone there would be saying, oh, I agree with you completely, you tell him it's a lot of nonsense, isn't it? I think you're quite right. You tell him in the second half as well. And then you go back into the second half of the training, and everyone's sitting there making notes, got their head down, and I'd feel like I was the odd one out again, saying things. And it's something we realised, that's something unusual about me, that I really enjoy putting forward a different point of view, and if it's a minority point of view, then I really enjoy the prospect of being able to discuss that with people. But most people are not like that. And certainly with the sort of views that the family party is promoting, we're in an age where these views are really attacked with vehemence, and that there's huge intolerance towards them. So that's obviously something I need to cope with. I think I'm quite thick-skinned about that. But it's not just me. I mean, it affects my family as well. Certainly when we're talking about starting the family party, I discussed that with my wife. We did count the cost. You never know what's going to happen in terms of being in the public eye, expressing the sort of views that we do. So it was really important that my wife was on board for that and was prepared to take that step. And she's been extremely supportive and realistic about what it might involve in the future. There have been difficulties already. There'll be other difficulties in the future. And then for my sons as well, I mean, there's been no major incidents, but some of the people can be pretty ruthless, and that they will target your kids as well, try and get at them one way or another. I mean, my sons have had little things at school, nothing major. But again, it's part of of counting the cost, that there might be difficult experiences for them as well. So we try and support them through the experience. But in terms of the change of lifestyle, at the moment I'm travelling around Scotland a fair amount, but I'm still at home the vast majority of the time. So during the day I'm working from home usually, so I'm actually probably seeing more than my wife than I was when I was away. But it's something to watch in the longer term. I was thinking, if you're the Scottish family party, you can't really make a case for neglecting your family in order to be on a sort of party business. So I think that's quite a good thing for me, because it would be laughable to be neglecting your family for the sake of the family party. So I think that's a good check for me. But so far so good. I say working from home is great. I'm enjoying seeing around Scotland and travelling around, but I think I'm still having plenty of time with my family as well.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You know, the family unit is a strong unit, and it's good to have it there behind you. It's important. It's essential, in fact. Because, like we're saying, you know, it's good to know you're up for it, and you seem well and truly up for this, and that's encouraging. And it will be encouraging to all who are involved with the new party. What was the deciding factor? What was the actual deciding factor? What was the thing that just made you just say, I'm really going to do this? You know, because was there doubts? Was there doubts about taking the step?
The thing that motivated me is just the growing frustration of watching the political scene in Scotland, watching what's going on in Parliament, looking at the direction, and just the frustration that there's views that I think are so reasonable, they're so logical, they've got such potential to improve life in Scotland, and yet they're completely absent. In fact, not just absent, they're often mocked, derided, dismissed. And that just builds up more and more frustration. And you can have an outlet for it in various different ways, say writing, speaking, debating or whatever. But it really got to the stage where I was so desperate to see what I see as this sort of wisdom actually in the Parliament. And that became just a massive, massive motivation for me. So I think the downsides, for me personally, it wasn't a close run decision, but there are downsides. I mean, who knows what the future will hold? You get opposition, that there'll be difficulties. But the motivation of wanting to see a different perspective brought into the Scottish Parliament, no, not just because it's going to liven up debate or make the TV shows better, but it's going to actually make the country a better place. And the other thing as well, I think when people hear these different views, more and more people will be attracted to them as well, because as I was saying earlier, there's a huge section of the population who have just never heard a presentation of the other side of the story on many of these issues. So I think it could be a very powerful thing. But that's been a huge motivation though, just the frustration of watching a debate going on when you know that you've got something that would be a really valuable contribution to it, but no one's making that.
No one's
really drove me on.
No one's taken the step. Yeah. Well, that's an interesting. It's an interesting thing to set up a new party. To set up a Scottish Family Party. I do like the title. I have to say, the Scottish Family Party. It'll be interesting to see how the rest of your visits go on the island. Always be keen to hear how that goes. And so. How long was this in the planning? When did you decide that you were coming up to Stornoway?
Oh, it's maybe a month or two ago.
Okay.
That we were invited. Yeah.
So you were invited?
Yes. Someone got in touch with Stornoway and they offered to set up meetings. Okay. Which is fantastic. That's what the ideal in different areas. Generally, I tend to go to places where there's been some contact. If someone gets in touch saying, it'd be really good to have a family party meeting in my area, and if maybe if another couple of people in the same place get in touch as well, then I'll say, okay, let's make a date, publicise it and see who turns up.
All right, okay. So I was just, because I was wondering, I wasn't sure if it was part of a kind of a sequence of covering the Highlands of Scotland or how that came about, the Islands of Scotland or whatever. So it tends to be that it's an invitation that draws in initially, is it?
Yeah. We've made a particular effort to go to the big population centres, the big cities we'll target deliberately. But in the more far-flung places, we're generally waiting for an invitation. Well, there's a possibility we're going to have a meeting in Orkney. A few people have been in touch.
Okay.
That's not on the cards just yet, but maybe before too long we'll be there. There's a chap in Durness who's been very interested. He's been talking about setting up a meeting, maybe having a branch up there in the far northwest. So we'll see if that works out.
Okay. So how? Right, you've set up a group of you. Have set up this party. So the party is official.
Yes,
it's gone through all the whatever the process is. How do you start funding, or how do you start fundraising, or how do you keep that going? Is there funds needed initially, or is that are you preparing for?
Basically, at the moment, I'm working on the party full time, self-funded, shall we say? So that can't carry on indefinitely, but for the next year or two, that's going to be fine. But we're building up the membership of the party, so the income of the party is increasing in that regard. It's now at the stage where our expenses are covered by membership income.
Okay.
Which is great. In the longer term, as the membership continues to increase, let's say the curve's getting steeper and steeper, then at some point, maybe in a year or two's time, it might be able to start paying me some sort of salary, move to getting an office and some other people involved as well. But that's further down the line. maybe at some point, a donor will emerge or donors will emerge, and that could transform the operation if we had some sort of substantial cash input like that. But our attitude is that we're called to what we're doing. We've got our mission, and we're working on it with whatever we've got. And if donors come out of the woodwork at some point, that will be very much appreciated. If they don't, then we keep going with what we're doing regardless. There's lots of ways that having more resources would be very valuable. It could accelerate our growth in lots of ways. But on the other hand, particularly with social media, we can do a lot on a shoestring at the moment as well. We can be quite effective without huge amounts of money to spend for the time being.
Okay. Oh well, my goodness, it's been interesting. It's been really, really interesting. So, you've gone from teaching. Do you think that's been a good foundation for you? The whole teaching education system over the last 20, 30 years, whatever you've been doing there?
Yeah, I think it's been a good insight into education and various aspects of it. I can see various trends that have emerged in education, particularly over the last 10 years, which I think haven't been positive, things heading in the wrong direction. So I've got first-hand experience of a lot of that, which has been very valuable. Within teaching as well, you spend obviously a huge amount of time standing in front of groups of people, communicating, planning events. So there's lots of aspects of it that are sort of transferable skills, as they'd get called in modern parlance. So I think a lot of that has been valuable experience. My last 8 years of teaching was the day job, but I was spending a lot of time working on other things as well, debating, writing, speaking, and doing research in that area as well. So I think there's been a long period of preparation in that regard as well.
Okay. So the journey started quite a while back. Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you became a Christian, if we go back to when you were 16, right? This is I think it was 16.
Yes,
was it, when you said you became a Christian? What's your memory of that? What's your kind of lasting memory of when you came to Christ initially?
So it was at a youth camp in the Salvation Army. In the Salvation Army, there's the culture that they'll have a bench at the front of the meeting room called the mercy seat, and the culture tends to be that if there's like an appeal, a call to become a Christian, it would often involve sort of going forward to kneel before God, and then someone would come and pray for you. I think part of my delay in becoming a Christian was I was sort of quite self-conscious. I didn't quite like the idea of having to walk out in front of everyone to do that. But I think, as often can happen with youth camps, I think the intensity of focus on God, the removal of other distractions, can create the environment where young people are willing to take that step. And I think that's a hugely valuable thing about youth camps. I think a lot of them still go on, and that's a great work. But then that's what happened to me, and I'd known for years that it was something I needed to do. Mm-hmm. But that created the environment where I was willing to take that step. So that's when I knelt before God. Someone came and prayed with me. So in a sense, I felt a sense of relief that I'd overcome my reluctance to take that step. But then afterwards, I felt that there hadn't been any discernible response to it, which I was expecting. I think the reason I was expecting it was just through hearing stories. I suppose when people talk about their personal testimony, you tend to hear about the more spectacular and exciting more, because people are more willing to tell those stories, they're more interested in this too, whatever. So I was surprised in a sense. I didn't doubt that God existed, but I was just surprised at what seemed to be the lack of response. And it must have been a couple of days later that I got home, but I think that God really intervened at that point and led me and spoke to me in exactly the way that I needed, with just the necessary message. Though there was no frills, there was nothing extra apart from the specific message that I needed, was that it was up to me now to start this walk as a Christian, that I was in God's family, and it was over to me to start the journey.
Yeah, and what a journey. Mm-hmm. It seems to be quite a journey.
But it's interesting to wonder sometimes, if I'd never taken that step, how different would my life have been? And I think the answer is probably totally different. I probably wouldn't have gone into teaching. I'd probably be, I don't know, earning lots of money programming computers or something. I've no idea. It could have been a completely different life path.
Yeah, because even when you think back, when you started, you went through that process where you said, nah, it's, I can't go down this Christian route because I've got other things to do, kind of thing. That and like we said, that's the thinking of
Yeah.
the majority of people. Like I said, and my own view was that something that the older folk, you're older, that you do when you're older. So it is a reflection when you actually look back, reflect. I mean, how many years have you been a Christian now?
16, what does that mean? That's 34.
34 years.
Yeah.
So if you just like you said, if you look back to if you had taken a different route, how the whole journey could be so different.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be looking at this party. You wouldn't
Yeah.
be up in Stornoway. It's a whole host of things.
It really feels like an adventure. It feels like God's called me to something very unusual. There's sacrifices, there's risks, but I'm really happy doing what I'm doing. I certainly wouldn't change it
Excellent.
for anything. I feel like I'm in the centre of God's will, as the phrase goes.
Well, it's great to be in that position where you can actually look back and say, I am where I am, and I'm happy with where
Yeah.
I am, where I've been, and where I'm going.
Yeah.
So that's a special. Your final selection of music before we sign off very shortly, and that was I Stand Amazed. Do you want to tell me before we played why you went for that one?
Yes, I think this is back to where we started really. When I survey the wondrous cross, that's the truth of the gospel. It was not just presenting the truth, it also helps us in our response to it, and that sense of amazement and wonder. And I think this song has the same effect as well. It's presenting the truth, but it's presenting it in a way that emphasises just what an amazing truth it is. Something that we shouldn't take for granted, something that we should stand in awe of and wonder.
Amazed in the presence of Jesus the Nazarene, and I wonder how he could love me, a sinner condemned unclean. Sing it again. I stand amazed. I stand amazed in the presence of Jesus the Nazarene. In your presence, Lord. And I wonder how he could love me, a sinner condemned unclean. How marvelous, how wonderful, and my song shall ever be. How marvelous, how wonderful is my Savior's love for me. I stand amazed in the presence of Jesus the Nazarene, and I wonder how he could love me, a sinner condemned unclean. Oh, how marvelous, how
Yes, Robin Mark there with I Stand Amazed, and that was the final selection of our guest on Glow this week, who was Richard Lucas from the Scottish Family Party. And Richard has been up on the island. He's had a series of meetings, and this is, like we explained, it is a pre-recorded show, recorded on the Tuesday. Richard having been in the County Hotel the previous evening, and this evening he is over in Barbas, and on Wednesday he will have been rather in Lochs. So thank you very much for coming in, Richard.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. That gave us an insight into what this party is all about, how it came about, and a bit about yourself as well. And welcome to our sunny shores. And I hope you enjoyed your stay.
Very definitely.
And that you'll probably be back at some point, I would imagine, over the next 2.5 years, that we'll be hearing a little bit more about you. If anybody wants to find out more about the Scottish Scottish Family Party, how would they do that?
We've got a website, scottishfamily.org, that goes through our policies. For more up-to-date comments on political events, we've got a YouTube channel and a Facebook page. The Facebook page will have updates most days about what's going on. We have an email newsletter. If you want to drop us an email, there's email addresses on the website. You could sign up for our newsletter. And we've also just started a Christian fellowship within the party. That's going to be a monthly email of a comment from a Christian perspective on politics. If you'd like to sign up for that as well, you're very welcome. On the website as well, if you'd like to join the party, that'd be great. There's a link to do that. I'm certainly looking forward to coming back to the island. I'm looking forward to exploring it a bit tomorrow as well. And I've really appreciated the warm welcome I've had here. So I'm really looking forward to coming back. So thanks, David, for the opportunity to be here today as well.
You're very welcome. Thank you for coming in. And if I could ask you to close tonight's show with a word of prayer, please, Richard.
Lord, I thank you for all that you've done in our lives, Lord. And I thank you for your church on this island, Lord. I thank you for your influence in this part of the world as well, Lord. I thank you for the way that you've worked in the past, Lord, and I thank you for the way that you continue to work in the future, Lord. So I pray you'll bless these islands, Lord. I pray the witness of the church may be strong, Lord. I pray that you'll protect the islands from attack in various ways, Lord, that you'll protect your message, your wisdom, your values here. And Lord, as I look forward to coming back, Lord, I thank you for the warmth of welcome here, Lord. I thank you for the natural beauty, for the history and culture in this place, Lord. I thank you for the richness of your creation, Lord, and this part of it in particular. So, Lord, I pray that you'll go with each of us, Lord, and continue to be close to us and bless us as we walk with you.